Welcome to the Grief Pod with Venetia Quick. This is a weekly podcast which looks at every aspect of something which has or will at some point affect us all. And that is grief. Whether you've lost a loved one or about to lose someone you know, or perhaps you're simply trying to help someone navigate their grief and don't know where to start or what to say, then perhaps this is the podcast for you. Each week I'll be bringing you different stories and experiences of loss, love, hope and at times humour. In July 2018, Zoe Holohan and her brand new husband Brian set off on their honeymoon in what should have been the most special holiday as newlyweds. However, just a few days later after their wedding, their destination, which was Venetia in Athens, was engulfed in wildfires, killing an estimated 120 people, one of which was Zoe's husband, Brian. In this week's episode, Zoe joins me to talk about the terrible tragedy that took Brian's life, her own physical as well as emotional recovery, and the unexpected happiness that she's also found with her new partner, Mark. Zoe, you're very welcome to this week's episode. I'm sure this is quite a painful time in your life to go back to July 2018.
It is, believe it or not, even over 7 years later. It's like, well, it's a reopening of a very big wound.
Yeah.
So it's something I always find difficult to speak about. And I think a few years ago I was worried the more I spoke about July the 23rd, 2018, the less effect it would have on me. But no, that hasn't transpired.
In some ways it can make it more real as well.
Yes. I mean, look, if you survive something as traumatic as I survived, it will forever leave you, it leaves an imprint. In fact, it's left an imprint all over my body, obviously, with my burn scars. But mentally, that trauma doesn't effectively leave you ever. Now, you learn to cope with it in time. I did a lot of therapy, well over 3 years of intense therapy.
Wow.
So that...
Because of your PTSD and all sorts, like
the
grief,
whole kit,
everything.
the whole kit and caboodle. I think I had a wonderful therapist who sadly fired me. I would be very happy to be continuing on that path, but she has more urgent cases to deal with now. But Dr. Collier, she gave me the coping mechanisms, the tools to deal with effectively a minefield of mental health issues, because we were talking about complex grief. Yeah, obviously that's what we're here to talk about.
As well, I'd imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's part and parcel of that. Yeah. But then you have layered upon that the PTSD from the traumatic events that occurred on that particular day, and then severe body issues. So I had to learn how to live once more in a disfigured and very different body to the one I'd inhabited before 2018. So she had a lot to deal with, and you can imagine what an incredible woman she must be.
So you're a big advocate for therapy as well.
Absolutely. If you were going to ask me the number one thing that I would recommend for anybody that's going through or has been through a trauma and is finding it difficult to cope with, if finding it invading their everyday existence, the number one thing I would say is, if you're lucky enough to find somebody that you can trust to speak to about that event, do so. But if you're really lucky to find a good therapist, a good therapeutic outlet, then that can be, well, in my case, it was absolutely life-saving. I'm not exaggerating when I say I wouldn't be here today without that.
Well, the fact you are here after what you've been through it really is just incredible. I think most people know your story, but for maybe somebody who hasn't heard it, you might give a little recap. You got married in July.
Yes.
And to Brian.
I did, to Brian O'Callaghan Westrop. I like saying his name, Brian O'Callaghan Westrop.
It's a great name. But he's, he came across as such a lovely guy, somebody who had huge empathy and raised money. He did a lot of charitable work with blood
Absolutely, with Blood Bikes East. I mean, he was intrinsically a very kind, generous soul. And he spent an awful lot of his spare time just looking after other people. But, not for thanks, not for kudos or not to be stamped a hero. he just did it because it was part of his makeup, you know, and I used to find that astonishing. For those of you who aren't aware of what blood bikes do, they're a group of volunteers, so it's obviously unpaid. They hop on their bikes and they travel all around the country, delivering blood, delivering medical supplies. On one occasion, I believe he delivered a heart transplant.
Wow.
So, you know, when there are scenarios where it's incredibly urgent, sometimes the BB community, blood banks community, well, they save lives. They effectively do. But Brian would do this. He'd hop on a bike. You know, he could say, honey, I'm out at 10 o'clock at night. I wouldn't see him until the following morning. And then he'd go into work. Then he'd do his day job. Yeah. And, wow. You know, I'm still in touch with quite a few members of that community. So I think that kind of, the reason I kind of click on that in particular is I think it sums him up as the person that he was. He was kind and he was generous with his time. And as I said, he didn't do these things for thanks. He just did it because he wanted to help other people. That's how he lived his life.
And that's, I suppose, when somebody like that, it's even worse. That, you know, you guys were together for a while.
4 years.
You got married. And this was supposed to be, you know, the holiday of a lifetime. It's your honeymoon.
Absolutely.
When you were there, you were in your villa and the fires started. And even just from then, not being able to get out of the villa with the electronic gates and no power supply.
I mean, you might
say... That's when it just started.
Like a cacophony of errors, you might say, or... I don't know, I spent an awful lot of time, you know, wondering what if we had left the villa that little bit earlier that day. I had fallen asleep after, you know, we'd had a siesta in the afternoon. You know, what if the electricity hadn't been cut off? Would we have been able to get over that 9-foot gate, which eventually we had to climb over? But you see, we had a car.
Yeah.
Had we had the car, Brian would probably still be alive.
Yeah, so there's a lot of sliding doors moments.
And by the way, you can drive yourself insane with the what ifs.
Of course.
You know, they haunted me for a very, very long time. That was a major part.
I should have done.
I shouldn't have chosen Greece. I persuaded him to go to Greece.
But we all do that.
We do.
In hindsight.
We do.
You know.
Yeah.
You got over the gate. A car picked you up. And
well, it wasn't quite as easy as that. No, I mean, we got over the gate. It's very difficult, and it is reliving the trauma. I probably won't go into every essence of that moment, but we were literally surrounded by walls of fire. As soon as we got out of the villa, we realised how grave. And when I say we got out of the villa, as soon as we were aware that there were fires creeping up the back garden, we got out within seconds, not minutes, within seconds. But we basically stepped out into a tornado of fire, is the best way of describing it. Everywhere around us were these spirals, these hot burning embers, and they were catching our clothes, and in my case, catching my hair.
It's like watching a movie.
It was a horror movie like you could never envisage in the worst vestiges of your brain.
Because it's one of those things, even as you're describing it, you're going, you can see it, but you can't.
Hell.
Yeah.
We were in hell. And we did manage to get over the gate. I dislocated my kneecap, my patella on the landing. But, you know, when your adrenaline is pumping like that, you really don't feel the pain. I knew something was wrong and my leg was a little wonky, but...
It was the least of your worries.
We were just running. We were running for our lives, and we ran. I only discovered much later, when I went back to Greece, when I started through the court process, that we actually effectively ran in a circle. And that gives you an idea of the absolute chaos, because there was no visibility.
Yeah.
You can't see, you can't breathe. You're this thick, billowy black smoke that... It was effectively like a blanket over your eyes. Every breath you take is agonizing. It's like swallowing acid, basically.
Wow.
So you're trying to hold your breath half the time. At one stage, excuse me, my long dress went on fire. So my legs got really badly burnt in that earlier stage. And Brian used his bare hands to put the flames out. Wow. So he was then burned. And we kept running, and eventually we came across I mentioned this in my book. We came across a little group of children who effectively just emerged out of nowhere. They were like little spectres on the top of the hill. It was the bizarrest thing. And in those moments when you're so terrified, you're only thinking of yourselves. You know, I was just thinking, I just want us to survive.
Yeah.
But when you see little innocents like that, and when I say little children, I'm talking one was in a nappy as a baby. So obviously
think how
we
scared
ran to
they are.
them and scooped them up, and we couldn't see anybody else around them. So we scooped them up in our arms, and then you might say miraculously this car came up the hill. And again, came out of nowhere. I can't really explain to you how the visibility was that poor, but it came out of the smoke. And we stopped the car. We literally threw the kids in the back seat. And there were 3 adults already in this quite small car. And then the driver opened the boot. We climbed in and off we went at great speed. But as you know, very tragically, just moments later, the car crashed. And while we were in the boot of the car, you know, my dress was on fire, my legs were cooking, my hand had welded to the lid of the boot. Wow. Because we were holding on for dear life. We were, 2 adults. It was a small boot, so we had to leave the lid up. And of course, when the car crashed and a tree came burning down on top of us, the impact flung Brian out of the car.
Yeah. You were then saved by
Manos
a nice man called
Saliagos.
Manos. Yeah. Wow.
It's a very... Look, we all have different recollections of moments like this. You know, I thought the reason I was carried to safety because I was calling out Brian's name. You know, he burned to death right in front of me. And I knew what I was seeing, although later I tried to just erase that memory. But I was calling his name because I wanted the last words that he would recall in this life to be my voice telling him I loved him. And time is a funny thing. I don't know really how long I was in the boot of that burning car, but I expected at that stage that was going to be my coffin. Okay. They were my last moments too. Manos Saliagos, the man who saved my life, he's a civil volunteer, basically walked through walls of fire, managed to save the people that were in the car. None of them were badly injured, thank goodness. 3 adults and the 5 kids, they all survived. I only, by the way, realised years later, I only found out it was 5. It was so confusing, I didn't even know how many children were in our arms.
Well, so you saved those kids.
Well, Brian did probably more so than I. He probably carried the majority of them. But yeah, they all lived and they were uninjured. So thank goodness for that. That makes it slightly crueler twist of fate that Brian was the only one who didn't survive.
Yeah, and he was a hero.
I suppose he was that hero, but then another hero emerges and Manos carried me. The reason, by the way, Manos did carry me out of the boot of the car, he only told me this personally a long time afterwards, was because my face had so badly cooked at that stage. I couldn't see through my left eye. My hair, I had long hair extensions for the wedding and they'd melted into my face. So, but my right eye just flickered.
Wow.
He said something and apparently my right eye flickered. And because he thought I was dead. I was literally under all the embers of this burning tree, but because my right eye flickered.
Wow.
He got me out.
You then obviously are taken to hospital and you've got, you're far away from home. You know, your family are back here. How did it... What happened then? I mean, it's just, it's so inconceivable to think you're so injured in a hospital far away from home. All this is going on. It's chaos.
Well, chaos is the word, by the way. And the first hospital I was taken to, I purposely never mentioned the name of this hospital. It was a public hospital and you could smell death as soon as I was wheeled in there. People were burned, people had drowned, or were everywhere. Everywhere there was chaos. One piece of luck that I had in that hospital was, by some unbelievable piece of luck, I still had my handbag.
Wow.
I have no idea how that happened to do that, but I had my handbag, and within that bag were my passport and Brian's passport.
Okay.
Car keys, whatever other little bits and bobs. My wallet, which had my private healthcare card, that turned out to be very useful in this scenario. And I was calling out because I was in absolute agony. I cannot, there are not words in the English language or possibly the Greek to describe the level of agony when you've got 3rd and 4th degree burns.
Yeah.
So I was cooked, and yet nobody did anything to assist. So I wasn't given any, not even a paracetamol.
Wow.
And that was for the first 12 hours after the fire. So I assumed this was where I was going to die, and I was calling out. Now, bear in mind, yes, there were lots of other people around, and but I was calling out and I was speaking in English. Maybe they didn't understand, but eventually this man came up to me and he said, "Are you English?" And I said, "No, I'm Irish." And I said, "Look in my bag," because at this stage my hands, I couldn't use my hands. In fact, my left hand was so badly injured that at that stage it had just curled up into a clump of bones, so that the flesh was just melted off my hand. Sorry for being gruesome about the injuries, but you know,
it really paints the story of what you like.
Horrific injuries.
It's just
horrific injuries, and you can imagine the level of pain I was in. This man, he looked at my passport. He took a photo of it. I begged him to take the bag. I didn't really know what I was doing at that stage, but he said, "I'll find somebody in the Irish embassy. I know somebody in the Irish embassy.
Wow.
They'll get you." And really that probably did save my life eventually, because a wonderful girl called Marianne.
but also to know as well that somebody's going to help you. Yeah, to cling on to.
So I was brought upstairs in that hospital, was left there all night without any pain relief, without anything. I was just basically thrown behind a curtain. The curtain was drawn. I was calling out. A nurse came in at one stage, stuck her head in and told me to stop calling out. The people were trying to sleep. Do you know, I rarely talk about this. I'm surprised I'm talking about it now, because it was...
But it's just, it
doesn't really demonstrate, to be fair, my general experience in healthcare, because anybody who's read my book will realise that it is in part form a love letter to the medical community, because once the crew from the Irish embassy came and found me, they got me out of there really, really quickly. And I was sent to the Matera. Phenomenal hospital, wonderful people who really, really did everything they could to save my life. They saved my eye, because I didn't think I'd ever be able to see again. They, started. I had about 12 surgeries in the few weeks I was there, and they were life-saving surgeries. I was in intensive care for that entire period of time. So, look, I got very good medical
but just
care.
Initially, they were unprepared.
Well, you know what? I'd be dead. If
Yeah.
I'd been left in that hospital,
Wow.
I would be dead. And actually, I found out a lot of people who had similar injuries to me passed very quickly in that hospital.
Okay.
You can understand why I don't want to mention the name of it now.
No, maybe you would. At this time, how conscious were you that Brian was gone, or were you sort of slipping in and out of real consciousness?
I think the brain can play wonderful games with us.
Yeah.
So I knew what I had witnessed. There was no denying that. But somewhere down the line, I started to tell myself an alternative version of events. So I had decided maybe he didn't. Maybe I was rescued. Manus carried me. I didn't know his name at the time, but this man had carried me to safety. Maybe somebody else. Maybe there was another Manus out there that had carried Brian to safety. So I started to tell myself this, and anybody else, by the way, who would listen in the hospital, to keep an eye out for him. I started to describe him. He had certain unique tattoos. And just tell myself the lie. And then I started to worry that, oh God, like my face is really badly disfigured, as is my body. What if he's looking for me and doesn't recognise me? Yeah. So this then was my, prime worry, so to speak. So it wasn't until about 3 days after the event, my older brother John was there, that he had to, the horrendous task, he and a couple of others went to identify Brian's body, and John had to break that Awful news that I already knew.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
But just make it
real.
official. So your family stayed with you then, I assume? And
I had people come to and fro.
Okay.
My brothers, John and Stephen, my AD was Brian's effectively brother from another mother. He and his wife Lisa spent pretty much the entire time there. They were in and out all the time. I had some friends as well. So I had a lot of people, looking out for me. And the embassy staff were phenomenal. A lot of the time, I don't think people realise what the embassies in these countries do.
Yeah.
They get through the red tape. They got my relatives in. They got Brian's body home. Because they don't practice cremation in Greece, and I couldn't bear the thought. As soon as I knew that Brian had passed, I couldn't bear the thought of him lying in a morgue. Yeah. But lying in a morgue with how many others we didn't know. So the embassy were just phenomenal. The diligent work they did, and the kindness, and they frequently visited me as well. So I was well cared for there. Yeah,
but you've just been through and are going through
hell,
and that you haven't even come home yet, and the coming home.
Well, prior to coming home, 3 weeks after Brian was killed, my father, Colin, passed away from a massive heart attack. So it was just another bloody brutal layer of cruelty and trauma. I literally could not believe life could be that cruel. And there was a part at that moment in time when I really just did not want to be here anymore. But I kept going.
30 odd operations.
Yeah. A lot of operations.
Amazing.
A lot of thank you, but a lot of procedures. I'm still undergoing procedures 7 years on. So laser, St James's Hospital, and we'll talk about that if we can in a little bit. But St James's Hospital have a wonderful plastics department, and laser is part of that. Laser sadly isn't a magic wand; it doesn't erase the scars, but it certainly makes them so much better. And so I'm still undergoing laser for certain scars, particularly the really brutal ones on my legs.
Wow. The whole process of recovery physically is one thing. But mentally, you've got we touched on the PTSD and everything, but mentally you've got the trauma of what happened that night. You've got the grief and the blended grief of losing Brian and then your dad. How, what, you're going in and out for procedures and operations, and where did that strength come from? Where did that sort of I'll keep going come from? Whereas,
do you know, the weird thing was it was like a buffer zone while I was in the hospital. I was in St James's Burns unit for a long time. So I was brought back from Greece on a Mediplane. But what we didn't realise was while I was on that plane, I'd contracted a very rare form of sepsis called TEN, toxic epidermal necrolysis. You're thinking, can this chick get any unluckier? I can see it written all over your face.
But it's just, it's so unfair. It's so unfair.
The word for 2018 is unfair. Yeah. There's another word, but I'm trying not to curse.
Yeah.
So I contracted this condition, and basically what that entailed was it started with a fever, and then I remember having an intense thirst on this Mediplane, and then I don't remember anything else. I went into this state of delirium. By the time I'd reached the Burns unit, my body was being invaded by this form of sepsis. And basically I lost all the skin on my chest, all the skin on my back, right down to my buttocks. My body just basically started to attack itself. You know, the real bitch. There you are. There is a curse word. You can beep that out. You can beep that out later. But the really, really cruel part of this was the areas that were previously untouched by burns. The only areas were now being attacked by this sepsis. And very quickly I developed multiple organ failure. I had to be put on life support, dialysis. They had to give me a tracheostomy to keep me breathing. Wow. The good news is I was unconscious. I was in a coma. So I have zero recollection of any of this part. Now, you can imagine how cruel that is for my family, basically, who were told
Absolutely.
the prognosis
Everything-
isn't good.
Yeah.
Considering they thought they'd finally got me back.
Yeah.
You know, they'd just buried my father. So now there was this that they were going to have to contend with. I got back to James's anyway, and I sometimes say it's nothing short of a miracle that I survived, but really it does come down to Mr. Audrin Shelley, who's the lead surgeon in St. James's Burns Unit, and the phenomenal team there, who never stopped fighting to keep me alive. And boy, did they fight, because it was a real uphill battle. But eventually, about a month later, I awoke from my slumber. But I discovered then that I'd inherited a plethora of other health complications. So,
And
it
what was
a
that
long
like
time.
for you then, when you come out of a coma? Because you sort of,
Well,
do you remember? Did you remember what had happened?
Well, I was,
Or did you?
I was stoned off my head when I came out of the coma, so I was having all sorts of lovely little fluffy visions, cartoon monkeys, my
Okay.
cat, who tragically also passed away while I was in Greece
no.
from a broken heart. I know, sorry, I know this
Yeah.
is getting very
I'm a cat
morose.
lady, so
Yeah, she was lovely, meow. But so I wasn't. I was inhabiting, I suppose, a parallel universe to everyone else when I came out of the coma. One thing that I like to tell people, just in case you ever do have a loved one who's in that state, is I could hear people. I could hear my family. I could hear. It was really bizarre waking up and thinking. First of all, I had no idea where I was, but I thought I knew the nurses. I definitely knew the surgeon, but I'd never seen them before. But their voices were so familiar.
So that's
to me.
interesting, because it's often something people don't really talk about that.
No.
And you never really, because you see things or you hear things and people are, and you sort of, obviously if you're with somebody in that situation and you're their
Talk
loved
to
one, you
them,
talk to them. But
talk to them and talk
it's
to them
interesting.
normally. My brother's voice.
did
his
you feel
voice,
like
but-
replying with their...
Oh, I'm sure I was having a two-way conversation in my mind.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But the confusion then really hit. What I was going to say earlier was when you asked me about the grief issue. I had a buffer because I was fighting for my life for so long in hospital. And the physicality of that gave me that buffer from grief. So I had to fight to survive. Twice in the period of, several months. I had to learn how to walk, to talk, to eat, to breathe, to use my hands again. I had constant, it was like, what would you call it, a spinning door of appointments in the hospital while I was living in the hospital, between physiotherapy for the legs, occupational therapy for the hands, speech therapy. Clearly that works because, I haven't shut up since I got my voice
Well
back.
able to talk.
But, there was so much of my energy was focused on that, that the grief only hit
Yeah.
when I was discharged. And then, boy, did I spiral. I literally felt like an explosion.
But you can understand
grief.
that because
I was home. And
you're
Brian
home
wasn't
and
there.
he wasn't there,
And
and the
Dad
house is
wasn't
empty.
there. And Dad was my ally. And Brian was my soulmate. And then all of a sudden,
they're gone.
they're gone. I have to deal with what I had to physically deal with. But I kind of failed to see what the point of it all was anymore. Now, I was still going in and out to the hospital 3-4 days a week for various different appointments. And it was actually, I think, one of the occupational therapists who picked up on how my language had changed, how maybe my approach to the appointments or
Okay.
my attitude had changed. Because in my head, I was planning an exit strategy
Yeah.
at that stage.
Which is totally understandable.
Yeah. Christmas was horrific. And really, I will say my heart goes out to anybody who's at an early stage of grief, or maybe not an early stage of grief, because sometimes these echoes come back years and years and
They
years
do.
later.
Yeah. And at
Christmas can
different
be
times.
so hard, so
Yeah.
hard. And my home, I wouldn't allow any tree, no decorations. I couldn't turn on the television. I couldn't listen to music. Everything
It's
had
white noise.
echoes.
It's just like everyone's, you just blank it out.
Yeah, and I couldn't understand how everybody else was getting on with life in an ordinary fashion, where my world had just imploded.
Did you feel quite not annoyed, but was angry sometimes.
anger,
that
absolutely.
Everyone's sort of organising Christmas pints and inviting you, but you're sort of going,
Well,
you shouldn't be
I
enjoying.
really couldn't because I was still on, I was still severely
getting on with
injured.
their lives.
Yeah, at that stage. So, I would have been bandaged from head to toe, in and out of surgery still. But anger, yes. Apathy, maybe. Just this feeling of, I don't belong here anymore. I didn't recognise myself when I looked in the mirror anyway. So I couldn't really see the point. I thought really the only reason I was continuing was out of gratitude to those who had put so much effort. And that, by them, I mean the medical community. I thought my family and my friends would be better off without me. So they weren't even a contender in this decision, if you know what I mean.
Wow.
And that sounds terribly cruel now, but that's how I felt. And it was only when I was in hospital, it was actually in the new year. I'd survived Christmas, that my surgeon, Mr. Shelley, told me that they had assigned me a therapist. Actually a team. There was a psychologist and a psychiatrist. And it was once I started working with the shrink. Are we allowed to use that term anymore? Probably not.
Probably not, but
probably
we can.
not. Well, yes, my psychologist, but she took me under her wing, and then we realised very quickly my PTSD was crippling me. I was suffering from severe flashbacks. The grief was just horrendous, and the body issues. So there was a lot. There was a lot to deal with, but we did it together.
Yeah. What about I read somewhere as well that you've talked about the W word, the widow word.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and the difficulty.
In my long dramatic black cloak.
I mean, there's little things like that are actually make the grief more complex, I think.
Yeah,
because you're suddenly given a label in one way that you're sort of going, but that's not me.
It's a
40
club,
days.
and it's a club that nobody wants to be in. But I felt too young for this, to be honest with you, which is, well, kind of an immature attitude, to be honest with you. People lose their loved ones at any age,
or you can be filling in a form and you have to tick the widow box, and the person you're handing the form to sort of gives the sad face, and you're like, tick the bloody form.
It's just, I mean, one of the weirdest things I had to do was when I was, registering my marriage and registering Brian's death at the same time, at the same office, and it's 4 days in between. Or, there were an awful lot of very complicated pieces of paperwork. Yes. Absolutely. I will say I got an awful lot of help. I mean, my family and close friends really did rally around me at that time. Somebody asked me recently, what's the best piece of advice that you would give to someone who'd been widowed, whether you be a man, woman, whatever. And the best practical advice I would give, there's emotional and
everything
practical.
In your name, including the bins.
Well, okay.
Is my one.
All right, okay. Well, mine would be get good legal advice fairly early on, because I was drowning. When I was drowning in paperwork, I thought I could handle it all, and it really just nearly pushed me over the edge. Get help. Ask for help. Go to the right people. It was only when I'm with the probate and all of that stuff, it's fiercely complicated, and I do not have a legal brain. I didn't have a clue what I was doing.
And it's relentless as
and
well.
it is relentless, and the forms and the cancelling of bills, and I did encounter some utter douchebags at that period of time. When it came to closing off Brian's bank accounts, or even just trying to pay his bloody bills.
But that's even hard, because you can't pay the bills because they're. But that's what I was saying
and
about
they're
the
not
bins.
in your. I know,
because they weren't, like in my situation. They were in Martin's name, so they wouldn't let me pay the bill. And I'm like, take my €50, and they wouldn't let me pay it.
Just take the goddamn money and let me try and deal with this as best as I can.
And it's just
morons.
I think
Absolute morons.
But it also shows that more places need more training and how to deal with it, because it just isn't that. And it's huge. Like when you're changing something, or you have a joint bank account, for example. Yeah. And it
takes such bravery, doesn't it? I bet it took all of your bravery to muster up the courage to just pay for a bloody bin.
Exactly.
bill.
Exactly. Oh no, well, I actually had a falling down moment, Michael Douglas and McDonald's moment, because I was just like, take the money.
Good.
Take
a girl.
the money.
Okay, that's what I
And
call
then
the
call
use
them
of
everything under
positive
the sun.
anger. By the way, you asked me earlier if I felt angry.
Yeah.
I actually think anger is quite a useful tool.
Yeah.
I think
Providing it's used in the right place.
providing is used, but you forgive yourself a little bit too.
Absolutely.
So I think in that scenario, you were absolutely right to feel angry, and
Yeah. What your book, obviously, and your advocacy for James's Hospital,
Yes,
and the work you're doing to raise awareness and funds for the Burns Unit.
For a new, improved National Burns Unit.
Excellent.
I'll just tell you very briefly why this is.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, it's kind of obvious. You'd have to be, deaf, dumb and blind not to realise why I feel so grateful,
of course,
to that hospital.
Yeah.
And they continued to take care of me 7 years on. They have the most astonishing level of skill in there. And I know this for a fact because I've been back and forth to Greece. I know the difference in the injuries that I've had. I've seen them on other people, and I know how exquisite the surgeons, the doctors, the nurses, angels. I'm an atheist, but even I could recognise my nurses were utter angels. All the therapists. But the problem is we're growing as a population. We need a bigger and better national burns and critical care unit. And, the thing is, sometimes people think they can't relate to burns. Mm-hmm. But you can relate to a car crash, or you can relate to some other tragic scenario where you might need physio, or you might need occupational therapy, or you might need plastic surgery, or God forbid, all of these things. They're all wrapped up in that burns unit because it's all to do with intensive care. It's all to do with when you're severely injured. So I feel extremely passionate. I feel like this could be my legacy to try and help build a national burns unit that will suit everybody, that will
so to be accessible to all.
That is accessible to all, and it's really badly needed, to be honest with you, because yes, they have all the skill set, but we need better technology, bigger surgeries, more staff, indeed, because I'm sure you're aware that the hospitals are desperately understaffed. Yeah. So I want to try and raise the funds and raise the awareness,
and that's
around
helped
that.
You as well. I mean, it's cathartic. I think to
and look, you've got to feel grateful.
Yeah.
You have to, or I have to, and that keeps pushing me forward as well. That I can eventually try and, in some semblance, give back to those wonderful people. Yeah.
Before we finish, just saying about pushing forward. Yeah. You have moved forward.
I have. In a number of different ways.
In a number of different ways.
Yeah. Particularly this year.
Yeah. And, I think it's such a hopeful, lovely story that you've met Mark.
I have, yes. At the very beginning of this year.
At the very beginning. It was the 2nd of January.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And you know what's really, I suppose, obviously, what's lovely is Mark is lovely. He's a cheeky chappy. He's extraordinarily kind. He was very patient with me at the very beginning. Because
it's difficult, because there's guilt, there's
guilt,
grief, because the grief doesn't just go.
Initially I thought the reason I wouldn't date again is because I felt like I'd be cheating on Brian. That sounds absurd, I know. Absurd, but that's how I felt for a very long time.
You're married.
I felt like I was still married. But in time that did pass. I was really more so terrified of showing my body and my scars, etc. And I was very protective of my canvas, so to speak. So it took a lot of bravery and courage for me to be in a position to do that with Mark. One thing I thought that was kind of interesting is late last year I moved house.
Yeah. That's a mind shift.
It is a mind shift. Yeah. I think that kind of reframed my life a little. And I gave myself permission to open my heart again. And I was lucky enough to meet somebody who was equally open-hearted. And and look, and by the way, just in case you found this podcast infinitely depressing, let me tell you, all I do is I laugh every day now, So he's given me the permission to laugh again.
Yeah.
To embrace joy.
Yeah.
To have adventures, to travel. all the things that I really missed for a very long time. I am
what you'd planned to do as well.
Yeah,
previously.
And I'm grasping, every element of joy with both hands now, even the wonky left
Are,
one.
are there bits with dating again, particularly for somebody who's listening who may be, in your position previously, is sort of at that stage where they think, oh, maybe I'd like to try. And you got to remember as well, if you're with somebody a long time, the whole dating, sort of scenario is completely different because it's all dating apps.
I know, it's like, terribly intimidating.
Are you dating the same guy? All this sort of stuff. You go, ooh. But, it's a completely different, it's a minefield.
It is.
So
absolutely.
You're also been through so much trauma. You're sort of exposing yourself.
I mean, I would say, take your time with it. Yes, I used an app and it was a good app. And I did go on a few random dates last year. They didn't work out. It wasn't a case of the guys weren't nice guys. I was fairly lucky, but there was zero spark. And I had kind of thought that I would never again, this is going to sound so childish, so immature, I thought I'd never fancy someone again.
Yeah.
I'd given up on that idea.
Yeah. Because there is a sort of thing like...
And I fancied Mark as soon as I saw him.
Excellent. So that's very helpful.
But it does show you that no matter what age you are,
Yeah.
I'm in my early 50s, but you still have to count chemistry into the mix in whatever fashion that sets with you or sits with you. That's got to be part of it, doesn't it? So, and I would say if you are going to start the dating process again, yes, I think you'd find a reliable app. Do not go straight on WhatsApp if somebody wants your number within 10 minutes. For God's sake, people, don't do that. Give yourself time, and then, go gently in after you've chatted for, a little while and go find a safe place to go on the first date. I have lots of friends who are going through this process right now.
Because it actually is for like everybody, whether you've lost a partner or
you
you've
could
separated
be divorced or separated or
or even still looking, because there was COVID when a lot of people didn't get the chance.
Absolutely, absolutely. So life was on freeze frame for a couple of years there, So. But also try and have a bit of fun and a bit of sense of humour, because, some of the dates that I had, perhaps not even this time around, but before I met Brian, some of them were absolute disasters, but they were very good anecdotes afterwards. So, try and look on life with a little bit tongue-in-cheek sometimes,
Absolutely.
And don't take it all too seriously. And if one doesn't work, well, then don't give up straight away.
Yeah.
The time was right for me this year, without a doubt. I wasn't ready last year, but I do think that the meeting Mark, there was that spark, and I think that's what made the difference.
And do you think Brian and Mark would be friends?
I would certainly hope so. I feel like I've got Brian's blessing.
Yeah.
Can I tell you a little story?
Go on.
A little sign that was sent to me. So, and I haven't actually spoken about this before. The night before I left the home that I shared with Brian.
Yeah.
Basically, the new owner was turning up the following morning for an inspection, and the estate agent couldn't be there. She'd had some last minute calamity. So I had no intention of being there to show the new owner around, but I had no choice. And I got myself very worked up that night.
It's a very difficult thing to do.
An appalling thing to do, actually, to be honest with you. But funny enough, it turned out to be quite fortuitous. So I was lying there. The goddamn Wi-Fi had been cut off. I'd obviously paid the bill too early or something. So I was lying there. I had my phone. I was lying on a mattress in the spare room on the floor, and I could not sleep. And I started to do what I always do when I'm stressed, which is clean. Now, the place was immaculate, for God's sake, and it was also empty. But there was one room that I hadn't really scrub-a-dubbed, which was the walk-in wardrobe, as I used to call it, the don't walk into wardrobe, because it used to be packed to the hilt.
Yeah.
But a couple of months prior to this period of time, while I had been packing up initially, doing the process, putting furniture in storage, I lost the diamond in my engagement ring. And I was absolutely heartbroken, traumatised. I tore the place apart. I went down to the basement where the bins were in the apartment complex. I tore all the bins apart. I looked everywhere. No sign of it. And I can't tell you how upset I was about this ring. So we're back to the night prior to my leaving the apartment for the final time. I'm down on my hands and knees, and I'm with my little handheld Hoover, and I'm crying. And I'm talking to Brian out loud because, you know, there are times when I'm clinically insane. So I'm talking to Brian and I'm on my hands and knees hoovering away. And next thing, the little handheld Hoover stops working. I hear a clink clank. And I look down and I kind of go, is anything else going to go wrong? Now, at this stage, it's 2 a.m. in the morning and the new buyer is turning up at 7. And I shake the Hoover, and what do you think the Hoover spits out? The diamond.
Wow.
And that to me was the moment that Brian said, now you don't need to hang on to this place anymore. You're going to leave here in the morning and you're going to start anew. And it was very short period of time between that night and when I met Mark. And I genuinely think it was that sign I needed. I really needed it.
Yeah.
But it meant I was ready to start again. Yes, I was moving home as well, so that, you know, the echoes and the sadness that were living in the walls to me, I would no longer have to face daily. But I actually think a lot of it came down to just, getting that diamond back, the ring. So,
and there are, I mean, all those signs mean something.
Yeah.
For sure.
I know, I'm a big fat hypocrite for an atheist, aren't I?
So you're amazing. And
Thank
I think,
you.
and you look fabulous.
Oh, well, thank you.
After everything you've
Extra
been
makeup
to.
on today.
And the very best of luck.
Thank you,
and
Venetia.
You know, I think you'll be just so, for anybody listening to this, it's just such an inspirational story.
I hope so.
thank you.
And for anybody that's struggling right now over Christmas, I'm sending you loads of love and light.
Yeah.
And be kind to yourself and be patient. And you know what?
And
in
be
time,
kind to others if you know somebody.
In time, it'll get a little bit easier, I promise you. It doesn't heal. Time doesn't heal, but it will get easier. So give yourself a break this Christmas.
Thanks, Zoe.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Grief Pod with Venetia Quick. You can listen on SoundCloud or wherever you get your podcasts. We also have an online community on Facebook, The Grief Pod, or on Instagram @GriefPod Series.